I had slightly mixed feelings about Deadpool and Wolverine on my first viewing. I enjoyed the movie for the same reasons that I enjoyed the previous Deadpool movies. It's funny, it's creative, it's just the right amount of edginess without being in bad taste. But comparing it to previous movies, I also felt like the story wasn't exactly up to par. Some elements like Wolverine's dark past and the threat of Deadpool's universe getting wiped out, in my opinion, don't get explored in as much detail as I would have liked, and it makes the film feel a little shallow. It was especially disappointing since I remember watching Deadpool 2 for the first time and being impressed with how much the dramatic weight had been upped from the first movie. It really felt like a big progression from the first film, which, yeah, it had a strong emotional core, but was still a relatively playful movie that didn't take itself too seriously.
Did I leave the stove on?
Deadpool 2, by comparison, was a step in a more somber direction, while still keeping the general goofy tone of the original, which I really appreciated. But then I took another look at the movie, and I found myself getting an unfortunately familiar Deadpool and Wolverine-esque feeling. But to be fair, I mean that in every sense, both the bad and good. I still find this movie really entertaining. I just feel that in retrospect, I may have blown the emotional aspect of the story a little out of proportion. Now, to help get my point across, let's start by looking at the character that the film's conflict revolves around. Russell, also known as...
Fire Fist.
Oh my god.
Not sure I really get the joke there, it's a perfectly fine superhero name. Regardless though, there is actually a basis for a good emotional storyline here in a number of ways. Russell is a very powerful but also very troubled mutant orphan with a flair for pyrokinesis and a resentment towards his mutant-hating orphanage for abusing him.
The first thing I'm gonna do when I get out of here, burn that headmaster alive.
Russell's role in the plot could make for a compelling story for both himself and Deadpool. First of all, Deadpool near the beginning of the movie expressed a desire to have a kid, but is now unable to for reasons that I'll get into in a bit. So when confronted with a young boy in desperate need of guidance and a lot of pent-up aggression, it has the potential to give Deadpool the chance he was robbed of to be a father figure so Russell doesn't go down a dark path. And as a result, maybe Deadpool will even reflect on some of his own, let's say, rash behaviors. They could especially learn from each other considering Russell getting abused, which is something Deadpool can almost immediately pick up on due to his own experiences.
Those guys hurt you?
However, while Deadpool does make an effort to protect Russell throughout the movie, the two of them spend most of the runtime apart, which means that their similarities and ways they could complete each other aren't allowed to get a huge amount of development. It's a shame because there's a lot you could do between these two. You could show Deadpool trying to teach Russell to process his trauma and anger, maybe by using humor to cope with it, kind of like he and Vanessa did in the first movie.
I slept in a dishwasher box.
You had a dishwasher.
Or you could have Russell's presence force Deadpool to confront his own past. Maybe in order to get through to Russell, Deadpool would have to be a little vulnerable himself and reveal that he's not quite as secure about his upbringing as he seems on the outside.
Fake laugh, hiding real pain.
Or to go in a different direction, maybe having to look out for Russell would highlight Deadpool's character flaws because, let's face it, he's not exactly a great role model. One plot point that comes up in the film is that Russell eventually teams up with a juggernaut bitch so that he can take revenge on the orphanage, falling deeper down that slippery slope to villainy that his upbringing was leading him towards. They try to make Deadpool accidentally responsible for putting that idea in his head.
You said it yourself. I'm not your friend. Find someone stronger, so I did.
The movie could give Deadpool more of a lesson to learn if, say for example, Deadpool treated his more ethically dubious character traits like his recklessness and his aggression as wisdom and Russell responded by taking it to the absolute extreme. It would mean that Deadpool would have to try to talk Russell out of it while also being forced to confront his own behavior to a certain extent. There are a couple of decent dramatic moments between these two, like Deadpool turning his back on Russell and then regretting it, and the point in the climax when Deadpool convinces Russell not to kill the headmaster of the orphanage. They're good scenes, but there's a lot of downtime between their interactions at the beginning of the movie and the end. It's funny downtime, but there isn't much actual character development, and I wish there was more of a back and forth between them throughout the movie.
They say millennials are the hardest to reach.
As for the other characters on Deadpool's team, most of them I don't really have much to discuss. Colossus is fine, Cable is fine. I wouldn't say I get emotionally affected by the whole found family dynamic they've got going on at the end of the movie, but they work fine enough. The only one I kind of take issue with is Domino, who spends the entire movie not even knowing what she's doing there, just tagging along on a whim because, as she puts it,
everything usually works out for me.
There is one very brief moment near the end when Deadpool and friends confront Russell's orphanage and rescue the kids being kept there, where she drops this little nugget of backstory.
I was raised in this place. But not raised, I was tortured.
Wow.
This is meant to serve as her emotional stake in the conflict. You know, she's saving these kids from this horrible experience that she had to endure while growing up, but frankly, it's very weak. This isn't really something that's built into her character or gets elaborated on so we have the proper context of what this means to her. It's instead a backstory that comes out of nowhere as an excuse for her to even be here.
And certainly not very cinematic.
It legitimately just feels like the writers went, wouldn't it be great if we had Domino in the movie? And then wrote one line of dialogue to justify it. It doesn't even really make sense. If she did feel compelled to help these kids, why did she wait all this time to do it? I don't buy the idea that now she's got a team backing her up because, call me crazy, but from what we know about her, I get the sense that she wouldn't struggle too much.
I'm lucky.
Okay, well, maybe I'm missing something. After all, there is still one aspect of Deadpool 2's plot that could give me what I'm looking for. Let's take a look at what I consider to be the strongest source of drama in this film, the element that kicks the entire plot into motion, the death of Vanessa. I'll give credit, this was legitimately pretty shocking to see when you sit down to watch the sequel to Deadpool for the first time. The love interest from the first movie, who had pretty solid chemistry with the main character, getting gunned down in the first 10 minutes, leaving Deadpool feeling lost, depressed, and a certain other descriptor that I've been advised not to say on YouTube. All of that in a comedy, no less. But it manages to not feel out of place because even while we're reeling from the surprise and confusion of it all, even the movie doesn't know what to make of it. Not to mention this obviously tongue-in-cheek, but still unironically good Celine Dion song. Well, mostly good. I'm not exactly a fan of this lyric. Can you use these tears to put out the fires in my soul? 'Cause I need you here. Whoa.
That's just lazy writing.
But throughout the movie, while they do joke around regarding the death, they still play Deadpool's grief reasonably seriously. There are a couple of moments where we see Deadpool's immortality get him to where he's just dead enough to meet Vanessa in the afterlife, but not enough to actually join her.
Ness, there's something here. I can't get to you.
It is somewhat sad to see a character as irreverent as Deadpool brought to genuine desperation, and their kinda final scene together where it seems like Deadpool has actually died and can now be with her, only for them to both realize that he's still got people living that need him and can help him move on, is a seriously touching final note.
Kiss me like you miss me, Red.
And then Deadpool travels back in time in a mid-credit scene to prevent her death from ever happening, effectively making the emotional core of this movie non-canon.
I hope you sharpen the cream cheese spreader.
I feel pretty confident in saying that this is the one thing in the entire Deadpool trilogy that I outright hate. Other aspects I may have my issues with, as I think I've made clear, but I'm usually able to take comfort in the fact that it's funny and charming. This, though, is just a complete cop-out. It's not really even a joke, it just undermines the best thing that the plot had going for it after the credits had already started rolling. And you might try to argue, but wait, if we don't show him saving Vanessa, then we can include those other funny scenes of him going back in time and killing Origin's Deadpool and the real-life Ryan Reynolds, because why would Deadpool go back in time for that and not save the love of his life? And to that, I'm gonna tell Deadpool what Sabretooth once told him.
That's funny, Wade. I think you confuse me with someone who gives a shit.
If you can't include a joke without undercutting the larger narrative as a whole, maybe just don't include it. What was even the point of that goodbye between them? I mean, geez, Deadpool, if you're gonna bring Vanessa back to life, at least be classy about it and dig up her rotting corpse, dismantle and scatter the skeleton across a bloody battlefield, appropriate her body parts as your own weapons, and replace her with an alternate universe version who's more comic accurate anyway. It's what Vanessa would have wanted. For the record, I still like Deadpool 2 and the trilogy as a whole for that matter. It's a fresh take on superhero movies that, yeah, isn't shy about throwing shade to its neighbors, but is still clearly proud of what it is and the genre that it's a part of. And I won't deny that Deadpool 2 is still extremely funny, which some people will probably argue should be enough.
Yeah, this is Deadpool 2, not Titanic.
That's not an unjustified stance to take, but the fact is, it's not all that the movie is trying to do. I would be fine with a Deadpool movie that is just pure comedy, but if you want to be fair to the filmmakers, as I'm sure you'd want me to be, they put those dramatic moments in for a reason. Do you really think they'd want you to defend them by saying none of it matters? Especially in an age where superhero media is so readily inserting heavy traumatic moments into otherwise lighthearted stories. Deadpool isn't bad from a dramatic perspective, but I may have let my surprise from the first 10 minutes run away with me. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters Heather Reed, Zelda, Radio Peyo, and Moon Goddesses. Thank you so much for the support.